Working on your weaknesses has to be one of the hardest things a runner can do. First off, it's easy to work on something you're already good at because you're already good at it. Training a weakness sucks because you're weak at it, and this shouldn't surprise anyone. We saw it as teachers all the time. Kids work hard in the lessons that they're good at and they switch off in the lessons that they find hard, when really they should work even harder in those ones, like we should as runners. The difference is, as runners, a lot of the time we only find out our weaknesses when something we regard as catastrophic happens, like a bad race performance or even worse, injury. But that's just the thing. Injuries highlight the obvious weakness. What about the subtle things in our day-to-day training or from just a normal race performance that we can teach ourselves to see? Mary and I have made a lot of mistakes, but we've also learned to see the subtle things, the subtle weaknesses in our training and our racing that we can put right for the next training cycle, and that's where we're going to start.
So we're going to start here because this treadmill, and this day in fact more than the treadmill, the fact that it's Wednesday is a perfect representation of me responding to where I believe my current weaknesses are so that I can put things right before Chicago. But we're going to get to that because before we can go forwards we have to go backwards. I want to talk about how I identified and what were my weaknesses in all of the previous training cycles. So London 2019 and Seville 2020, these are the most obvious. I got injured in both of those training blocks, and the reason is quite simple. I stepped up from 8 years of training multisport, so triathlon, and then moving more into the running realm only, and my body literally just couldn't handle the volume. It was like a bit of a shock to the system, to be honest with you. It was one of those where I was like, oh, I'm going to need to do some things differently to how I've ever done them before. So I invested in getting a proper run analysis done to avoid injury. I invested in physiotherapy and certain treatments, like going to see a chiropractor. And I did like specific strengthening programs. This was like the first bit, is like, oh, I've got a weak hip or weak calf. I'll strengthen those. Like baby steps, but those were the first 2 marathon cycles just done. So then I was in the game. This is where it got interesting. In 2022 I ran the Bangkok Marathon, which is, if you can imagine, running a marathon in a sauna at midnight. Very enjoyable. And I actually ran a 2:57, which I think is worth significantly faster in a temperate climate, but I had a good race. Fell apart a little bit at the end. So I'd say they were more positive than negatives, but I definitely realised I wasn't fueling anywhere near enough during the race, and also I realised that if I wanted to play with the big boys and I wanted to get a little bit faster, the sessions that I do and the volume that I do, I'm going to have to put a little bit more in. And so I started to plan for the New York training block. So then we got to New York in 2023, and I really had tried to put a lot more volume in my training by then. So whereas I was maybe at 60 or 70 kilometers max, I was getting up to 80 or 90, but I barely got through that training cycle. It was only a little bit of luck, a little bit of getting on the elliptical. In the race, 2:53, I was delighted, that was a PB. However, I fell apart near the end, and what I realised is, in training, I'd started doing marathon-paced sessions instead of all easy, and I felt pretty satisfied with that. I was certainly heading in the right course. So I moved on to Boston 2024. Boston 2024 were when things, in honesty, started coming crashing down. I ran the race. It was awful, terrible experience. The training in the lead-up had been very much rinse and repeat for New York. The only difference is I tried to do regular 30-kilometer long runs at the weekend, and when I look back in retrospect, perhaps that was too much for where I was at that point and considering I had a full-time job. So I came away from Boston, in my opinion, having run a 2:59 and only just got under 3 hours and had a terrible experience, in need of a complete teardown. I'd lost the joy of running. And then to Chicago, the one where it all clicked finally. And what did I change? Well, so we went for threshold work. Weekly, we would go to the track and we would push ourselves harder. I also factored in a lot more cross training, and what I think was the crucial thing is we really researched the nutritional side of it, which I'd kind of taken for granted in the last couple of blocks. And with those 3 changes, I was able to run a 2:44 at Chicago, smash my expectations of a 2:48, and I was like, I'm here. It's all clicked. I've done it. And then it fell apart. Because that's how strengths and weaknesses go. They don't stay strengths, they don't stay weaknesses. That was the hardest easy run I've done in a long time. Look at the sweat on here. So I would be forgiven for thinking rinse and repeat for Berlin, right? Everything worked, so Berlin, do the same again and just trust in the process. Yes and no. 5 weeks before Berlin, my Achilles flared right up, put me right out of training for a couple of weeks, and that was mainly because, I mean, that's just a lesson learned. I wore carbon plates 3 of my 4 runs in that week. Okay, lesson learned. I got to the start line, I ran 2:57. Straight into the Shanghai block, that went pretty well. Ran a 2:50 in Shanghai about 6 weeks, 7 weeks later. Oh no, about 10 weeks later. All going good. A week after Shanghai, my body finally said, no thank you. So my calf blew up pretty spectacularly a week after Shanghai, put me out of training for 8-9 weeks. I had maybe 3 or 4 weeks to train for Tokyo. I still ran a 2:54 in Tokyo, but I learned some pretty valuable lessons, some really, really important lessons that I'm going to implement for my Chicago block that I'm implementing right now. And we are going to talk about that, absolutely, but first, Mary's journey has been different to mine with different things to improve and different strengths. And I'm so tired. That is not a good start. It's not a good start to a 10K in the heat as well. What do you reckon the temperature is?
50.
50 degrees. I'm not sure it's 50.
No, I think it's about 34.
Yeah, okay, well we better get going. Here's the thing, like I think for me, my journey and my signals in my training for what I need to work on have been quite simple, because I've had like quite obvious negatives like injuries and things like that. Yeah. Yours have been a little bit more subtle, and that's why I'm gonna let you explain whilst we go for this run. Okay?
Let's do it.
Let's just get started first.
Let's do it. That's my old
that's your,
catchphrase.
it's not your old catchphrase, it's catchphrase. Okay. Let's do it.
My first marathon was in Seville. 3:36 was my time. 2 big learnings. Firstly, with training, the long run alone won't cut it. I just wasn't consistent enough with my training across the weeks. And in race, it's a trap. You cannot go out faster than your training dictates and just hope for the best. Pacing, holding back at the start is crucial. So next up, I'm going to Bangkok. We'd moved to Thailand, we'd got through COVID. I put in a really good training block, but had a terrible race. And that was about taking different approaches to different races. This one had like a midnight start. So I ate the wrong stuff before. I should have eaten breakfast food. It's about being specific with the race, the course, timings, the logistics, and making sure you practice specifically for the race you're running.
What about Boston?
Boston. So I ran 3:24, which was close to my PB at the time, but it was a bit of a rough ride. And there were 2 main things. One, you cannot skip strength. I got a bit injured and didn't have the strength in my legs for those hills. And you can't skip fueling. I was under fueled and I felt it. So that was a big wake up to learn how to fuel well and to get it right for the next one.
That was my lesson too for this one, if you'll remember. I think we both suffered fueling wise.
We did. Okay, we'll take a moment for this one because Berlin last year was a tough race and it had probably been the best training block of my life. Went in with really high hopes and expectations, but the weather was crazy hot. Even for us training in Thailand, we'd been in cooler weather for almost 3 weeks before, and we really struggled. And that learning was that I need to adjust my plan according to the conditions on the day. So I ran 3:15, just 2 minutes shy of my PB, but I wonder if I'd started out slower and more conservatively, maybe I could have snuck a PB.
Looked after your heart rate.
Yeah, it was high and I didn't adjust to the weather. I just kind of blazed ahead with the plan and Yeah, I realised then you can't do that. You've got to adjust and adapt if it's a hot day.
It feels hard to do in the moment, I think, because you're like, I don't want to run slower than I've trained for, but it's not if long term you're going to be a faster finisher. Like you're going to have a better time at the end because you didn't fall apart.
Yeah,
like you didn't fall apart.
Well,
I did.
I definitely could have had a better time out there, better experience, but we learn.
Okay, Mary, on to Chicago training. And you might think, Chicago training, you've still got London and Manchester to run. Yes, we have, but we're not prioritising them as an A race. We're just going to enjoy those races. So Chicago is all in.
All in.
All in. Mary's sub 3 attempt, my sub 240 attempt. And we've identified two things from the both of us that we think we need to change for the coming training, and we're going to show you what and how with the old trusty. I just wanted to slam that down on the on the old trusty. So let's start with where I'm kind of at the moment, and really where I've been for probably 4 training blocks now is very simply I've been able to run about 4 times a week. So I've been able to run on Tuesday, usually a track session, Thursday, Saturday and Sunday, and I usually cycle on a Friday. But here's the thing, New York and Boston I tried to run on a Wednesday, but that usually turned into either not training at all or a bike or an elliptical, and that kind of led to about a 65 to 75 kilometer week. Maybe I would top out at 90 one week, but I couldn't hold it there. So here's my plan for London towards Chicago. Is the new plan is that for London, I'm just aiming to run 65 kilometers a week, but what I'm aiming to do is divide those runs over 5 days. So essentially, I'm now looking to do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, bike on Friday, and that way I'm training 5 days a week, but I'm not putting a lot of volume through my legs yet. The aim is that by the time I get to Chicago training, I can get up to 90 kilometers regularly using 5 runs, maybe even some double days. So I shall be doing the annotation for Mary whilst she will be doing the explanation. So Mary's needs. This was the Tokyo training block, and as you can see, you do it. Sorry, Mary, you go.
So for Tokyo, I ran 6 days a week, and 2 of those days were double run days, so 8 runs over 6 days. And also I hit 100k for 3 weeks.
And that's great, but we think consistency-wise you can do even more.
Yeah, that wasn't ideal because it was coming off the back of another marathon, and Chicago's going to be the big one. So I'm going to aim to hit again 6 days running with 2 double days, so 8 runs in the week. And I'd really like to get up to 100 kilometers across 6 weeks. So in both of the build blocks with a recovery week in the middle.
So the first part of our needs, that as different as they are, it's all about volume and consistency. We have a very obvious way of trying to achieve that. So we're going to run now through the 2 hows for the different ways for the both of us, and it starts in the gym.
So again, this bit should come as no surprise to anyone, is that Mary and I have committed to getting back in the gym regularly. I'm talking about 3 times a week, and when we go there we're talking about compound movements. We're investing in squats, split squats, bench press, pull-ups, and then we're working on areas of our body that we've had traditional weaknesses with. So for me, it's the calves and Achilles. So we're doing like a lot of single leg calf raises, sometimes static, sometimes eccentric, but we are focusing on areas of weakness. I think that bit you could pretty much cut and paste for anything that you want to achieve. If you're regularly working on strengthening your body, it shouldn't surprise anyone. So for Mary wanting to go from 3 lots of 100 kilometer weeks to 6 lots, and me wanting to go from 4 days a week to 5 regularly, the key underpinning that is the strength work. That's the easy bit to explain. Now this is the bit where our paths diverge that little bit, and it's because I need to add that 5th day in. Mary doesn't need that already. So I'm now focusing on a small run on a Wednesday. We're going Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, just 10 kilometers on each day, whereas traditionally I would have done maybe 15 on a Tuesday, 15 on a Thursday. Now I'm just doing 10, 10, 10, and I'm then running Saturday and Sunday. And I'm gonna do that week in, week out. In the lead up to London, it's going to be 10 kilometers. After London, I'm just going to bring it down to 5, just so my body's like, oh wait, so we run on a Wednesday now. And I'm like, yeah, we do, get used to it. And the strength work should allow that. And then once the body's ready and we start Chicago Marathon training, I can start putting volume over the 5 days. With Mary's slightly different approach, she already has the consistency and the volume. It's about the speed. We're going to get to the track, and we're going to focus on not just lactate threshold, that will be in the Chicago training. We're going to focus on speed, VO2 max work. We're going to look at 200 meter repeats, 300 meter repeats, sometimes 100 meter repeats. We're going to focus on getting those legs turning over faster, and we're going to do a lot more strides after some of Mary's easy runs. And we think that this could be the key to unlocking the next level, the sub 3 and the sub 240. And you know what? It might not be. We don't know, but this is the gamble we're taking based on the information we've seen in the past training blocks. And if you want to follow this crazy journey, we have Chicago and New York at the end of the year, but already we have London and Manchester next month. We've got Sydney in August. We're going to try and take you with us, but we're also going to try and help you be better runners in the process. So if you think that's worth a subscribe, make sure you hit the button. And you're almost certainly going to love this video, which was how we took Mary from essentially a 350 something marathon down to 3:00:02 seconds. Sub 3 is on. So follow that journey, and we'll see you Wednesday.